The champagne cork hit the ceiling of the yacht's main salon just as my wife of 30 years raised her microphone. 80 guests held their breath, expecting a toast. Instead, Patricia smiled at the crowd and said, "I'm divorcing Michael tonight, and I'm taking everything he has." My daughter Madison started the applause first. Then my son Tyler joined in, phone already recording. My youngest, Zoe, actually whooped. The guests looked confused. Then some laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. I watched my 3 children grin at each other, like they'd just won the lottery. I set down my glass and walked to where the ship's captain stood, near the documentation table we'd set up for our vow renewal ceremony. "Captain Morrison," I said quietly, "I won't be needing the renewal paperwork, but I will need those divorce documents my wife's attorney sent to the ship yesterday." Patricia's smile faltered for just a second. The captain produced a manila envelope. I opened it, scanned the pages quickly, and signed every line without hesitation. The room went completely silent. I handed the papers back to Patricia, who stood frozen at the microphone, clearly expecting me to beg or argue or make a scene. "You have no idea what you just did," I whispered to her, just loud enough for the mic to catch it. Then I turned to our guests. "Apologies for the disruption, everyone. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. The bar remains open." I walked out of the salon and headed to my stateroom. Behind me, I heard Tyler's voice, loud and confident. "Finally, Dad, you might want to pack light. You won't need much where you're going." The laughter that followed echoed down the corridor. What none of them knew was that 3 days earlier, I'd received an email from Patricia's attorney, accidentally CC'd to me, outlining their entire strategy. The cruise celebration was supposed to be the perfect trap. Serve me papers in international waters, in front of family and friends. Pressure me into a settlement that would give her 70% of our assets before we even docked. What Patricia didn't know was that Dr. Michael Chen, cardiovascular surgeon, didn't actually own anything. Not the house, not the cars, not the medical practice. Everything was held by the Chen Medical Holdings Group, a Cayman Islands LLC, established by my father in 1987, 2 years before I even met Patricia. I was merely an employee who happened to draw a very comfortable salary. The prenup we'd signed 30 years ago, which her attorney clearly hadn't read carefully enough, stated that in the event of divorce, all assets would revert to their premarital ownership structure. Patricia had spent 3 decades thinking she was building wealth with me. In reality, she'd been spending my salary while the actual assets remained completely separate. I'd learned this structure from my father, who'd learned it from his attorney after his own bitter divorce from my mother. "Protect yourself first, Michael," he'd told me when I was 25. "Not because you don't trust people, but because trust isn't the same as stupidity." I sat in my stateroom and opened my laptop. The ship's Wi-Fi was excellent. I'd made sure of that when booking. I pulled up the secure portal for Chen Medical Holdings and initiated Protocol Sigma. It was a protocol I'd hoped never to use, but my attorney and I had designed it for exactly this scenario. 1 click, and every credit card in Patricia's name was frozen. Another click, and the house alarm codes changed. A third click, and the access codes to the garage were reset. The car keys they'd be expecting to work when we docked in 3 days? Already invalidated through the vehicle's remote systems. Tyler's entrepreneurial ventures, 5 failed startups I'd quietly funded through anonymous LLC investments. Those investments were being withdrawn immediately, triggering the standard contract clauses that gave me first right of refusal to buy back equity at pennies on the dollar if funding ceased. Madison's art gallery in Soho, where she showed her boundary-pushing installations to crowds of wealthy friends I'd cultivated for her. The gallery lease was under Chen Medical Holdings subsidiary. I sent an email to my property manager to issue a standard 30-day notice for the space. Zoe's lifestyle as a wellness influencer living in a penthouse I paid for while she posted about manifesting abundance. That penthouse was being listed for sale effective immediately. I initiated these actions with the same precision I used in the operating room. Steady hands, clear mind, no emotion. Then I pulled up the home security footage. Our house in Greenwich had cameras in every common area, installed 5 years ago after a break-in scare that, in retrospect, Patricia had seemed oddly enthusiastic about preventing. The cameras had audio and were completely legal since everyone in the house had been informed of their presence. I'd been reviewing footage for the past 2 months, ever since I'd noticed certain behaviors change. Whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, knowing glances between Patricia and the kids. Tyler suddenly interested in my estate planning when he'd never cared before. Now I scrolled back to a conversation from 3 weeks ago. Patricia, Tyler, Madison, and Zoe in the living room, drinking wine. Patricia's voice came through clearly. The cruise is perfect. He'll be trapped. Embarrassed in front of everyone he knows. He'll sign anything to make it go away quickly. And we split everything? Madison asked. After legal fees, I'll get 60%. You three split the rest. That's still $30 million each for you. What about Dad? That was Zoe, always the soft one. What about him? Tyler laughed. He'll have his precious career. He loves those operating rooms more than he ever loved us anyway. This is justice. We've put up with his neglect for 30 years. I'd watched that footage 3 times, just to be sure I'd understood correctly. They actually believed I'd neglected them. Tyler, whose 5 business failures I'd funded without a single word of reproach. Madison, whose art career existed entirely because of the connections and capital I'd provided. Zoe, who'd never worked a day in her life but somehow believed she'd manifested her luxury apartment. I'd missed Tyler's baseball games because I was performing emergency triple bypasses. I'd skipped Madison's art shows sometimes because I was repairing aortic aneurysms. I'd been absent from Zoe's graduation because a teenage patient needed immediate open-heart surgery. I'd thought they understood. I'd thought saving lives was something they'd be proud of. Apparently, I'd been wrong. The knock on my stateroom door came around midnight. I knew who it would be. Michael, we need to talk. Patricia's voice had lost its triumphant edge. I opened the door. She stood there still in her evening gown, but the confidence had cracked. Behind her, Tyler looked annoyed. The credit cards aren't working, Patricia said. There must be some mistake. No mistake, I replied calmly. Those were company cards for household expenses. Since we're divorcing, the company has revoked them. Standard protocol. Standard protocol? Tyler stepped forward. Dad, don't be an idiot. You can't just cut off Mom's cards. I didn't. Chen Medical Holdings did. I'm just an employee, Tyler. You know that. Bullshit. You own that company. Actually, I don't. Check the Delaware Corporate Registry if you'd like. The company was established in 1987 by my father. I'm the CEO, but the ownership is held in trust. I draw a salary. A very good salary, but just a salary. Patricia's face went white. The house, Chen Medical Holdings, subsidiary, leased to us for tax purposes. The lease terminates upon divorce per the prenup you signed. The cars? Company fleet vehicles. This isn't possible. Patricia's voice cracked. Your attorney said you were worth over $200 million. The company is worth that? Yes. I'm worth my salary and my retirement account, which under the prenup is mine alone since it was established before our marriage. Tyler pulled out his phone, frantically typing. I could see him searching corporate records in real time. This is fraud, Patricia hissed. You hid assets. No judge will allow this. I hid nothing. Everything was disclosed in the prenup. Your attorney should have explained it to you. My attorney certainly explained it to me. Madison appeared in the corridor, Zoe behind her. What's happening? Your father, Patricia's voice dripped with venom, has apparently been lying to us for 30 years about what he owns. I never lied. You never asked. You assumed. Jesus Christ. Tyler was staring at his phone. She's right. The house is owned by something called Chen Properties, LLC. The medical practice is Chen Medical Holdings. Even the vacation home in Aspen is Chen Recreation, LLC. All subsidiaries of the parent company established by my father before I married your mother, I confirmed. So what do you actually own? Madison demanded. My personal retirement accounts, which are protected, my salary, my personal vehicle, a 2015 Honda Accord that I drive to the hospital, my personal clothing and effects. That's about it. Zoe started crying. This isn't fair. What isn't fair, I said quietly, is planning to divorce your spouse for money while convincing your children it's about justice for neglect. What isn't fair is celebrating that divorce in front of 80 people who've known us for decades. What isn't fair is teaching your kids that their father's value is measured in dollars rather than lives saved. You self-righteous bastard, Patricia snarled. You think you're so noble? You were never there, never present, always at the hospital, always with your patients. We were your afterthought. I was saving lives. You were hiding from your real life, from us. Maybe she was partly right. Maybe I had buried myself in work. But I'd also provided everything they'd ever wanted. Every luxury, every opportunity, every safety net. When we dock in 3 days, I said, you'll each need to make your own arrangements. The cars won't start with your keys. The house alarm codes have been changed. I'll have personal belongings packed and shipped to wherever you'd like them sent. Where are we supposed to go? Tyler's voice had gone from angry to panicked. That's not my problem anymore. You're all adults. Tyler, you're 32. Madison, 29. Zoe, 25. Figure it out. I closed the door on their protests and locked it. The next 3 days on that ship were the longest of my life. I stayed mostly in my stateroom, working remotely through the excellent Wi-Fi. I had surgeries to schedule, patient consultations to conduct via video, research papers to review. The family stayed away, but I heard things through the walls, arguing, crying. Patricia's voice getting increasingly shrill as she called attorney after attorney, each one presumably explaining what her first attorney had missed. On day 2, I logged into the home security system and watched the camera feeds. I'd given my property manager authorization to begin showing the house to potential buyers immediately. A real estate agent was giving a tour to a young couple while my family was still on the cruise. The current occupants will be out by the end of the month, the agent was saying. The owner is very motivated to sell quickly. I felt a twinge then. Not regret, exactly, but something close to sadness. That house had been our home for 23 years. Tyler had learned to ride a bike in that driveway. Madison had painted her first mural in the basement. Zoe had hosted her 16th birthday party in that backyard. But it had never been ours. It had always been Chen Medical Holdings's. I'd just forgotten to mention that to Patricia. We docked in Miami on a Thursday morning. I'd arranged for a car service to meet me. I watched from the deck as Patricia, Tyler, Madison, and Zoe tried to use the credit cards at the ship's boutique for last-minute purchases. Watched the embarrassment as each card was declined. Watched Tyler try to pay for all 4 of them, then fumble with his phone as his own cards started declining. The offshore investments funding his current startup had been withdrawn. The automatic payments I'd set up for Madison's gallery rent had been canceled. Zoe's penthouse maintenance fees, which I'd been auto-paying, had bounced. They looked up and saw me watching. The hatred in their eyes was almost physical. I left the ship before they figured out how they were getting home. The first week after we docked, I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment near the hospital. I'd been staying at extended stay hotels during my marriage anyway, when surgeries ran late, so the apartment felt almost familiar, comfortable, quiet. I had my attorney send the formal property division documents. Per the prenup, Patricia was entitled to exactly what she'd brought into the marriage, nothing. She'd been a struggling content creator when we met, which at that time meant she had a blog that made about $300 a month. Her attorney tried to argue for alimony based on lifestyle maintenance. My attorney pointed out that the lifestyle had never been ours to maintain. It had been the company's, and company benefits were not marital assets. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. Connecticut has a no-fault provision, and since there was nothing to fight over, there was nothing to litigate. What I didn't expect was the surveillance to continue being useful. I'd forgotten to cancel the home security monitoring. Or maybe I'd deliberately not canceled it. Either way, I still had access to the cameras in the house that was now listed for sale but not yet sold. I watched Patricia move back in, even though she had no legal right to be there. Watched her realize the utilities had been shut off. Watched her call the power company and try to restore service, only to be told the account was in Chen Properties LLC's name and required corporate authorization. I watched Tyler show up with a locksmith, trying to break into what he thought was his inheritance. Watched the locksmith explain that the property was owned by an LLC, and changing locks without corporate approval would be illegal. I watched Madison arrive with a moving truck, planning to take furniture. Watched her realize that every piece of furniture was tagged with Chen Properties LLC inventory stickers. Everything in that house had been purchased through the company for tax purposes. I watched Zoe cry on the front steps, on her phone, calling friends to ask if she could stay with them, just for a few days until this gets sorted out. It wasn't going to get sorted out. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. On day 12 post-divorce, Tyler found my apartment. I don't know how, probably hired a private investigator with money he didn't have and would soon regret spending. He pounded on my door at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. I just returned from a morning jog, my first real exercise in years. Divorce, I discovered, freed up a lot of time. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door. "No, we don't. Dad, please. Just 5 minutes." I let him in. He looked terrible. Hadn't shaved in days, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him wear on the ship. "I need help," he said simply. "With what?" "Everything. I have investors calling. I told them I'd have the next round of funding by now. I don't. My apartment lease is up. I can't pay first and last for a new place. I'm sleeping on my friend Jake's couch. He's getting tired of it. Those all sound like your problems. Dad, I'm your son." "Are you?" "Because 12 days ago, you applauded your mother divorcing me in front of 80 people. You recorded it on your phone. I assume you posted it somewhere?" He looked at the floor. "Instagram. It got 50,000 likes. Congratulations. Did the likes pay your rent?" I deleted it. "After how many views? 2 million maybe? I don't know." I poured myself coffee. Didn't offer him any. "I was angry," Tyler said. "We all were. Mom said you'd been hiding money from us, that you were planning to cut us off anyway, that this was just accelerating the inevitable. Your mother lies to serve her interests. She always has. I know that now. Do you?" He met my eyes then. For the first time in years, I saw something real there. Fear, maybe. Desperation. "I can't do this," he admitted. "I'm 32 years old, and I don't know how to actually pay rent. I don't know how to budget. Every business I've started has failed because I didn't understand basic things like cash flow or payroll taxes. I need help. Then hire a business consultant. I don't have money for that. Get a job, save money, then hire one." "What job?" "I don't have a resume. I've never actually worked for anyone." "Then build a resume. Start at the bottom, like everyone else." "I don't know how to do that." His voice cracked on that last word. And for a moment I saw him as he'd been at 7 years old, crying because he couldn't figure out his math homework. I'd been at the hospital performing an emergency CABG. Patricia had hired a tutor. We'd always hired someone. For everything. "Tyler," I said slowly, "do you know why I became a cardiac surgeon?" He shook his head. "Because my father told me at 18 that he was cutting me off. No more money, no more safety net. I had a brain and 2 hands, and I needed to figure out what to do with them. I worked 3 jobs to pay for undergrad. I took out massive loans for medical school. I lived on ramen and coffee for 8 years. And I learned that I was capable of more than I'd ever believed possible. That's different. You were always smart. You're smart too. You just never had to use it. So what am I supposed to do? Just figure it out?" "Yes." "That's your answer? After everything?" "After everything, Tyler, I gave you everything. Literally everything. And you celebrated my public humiliation because you thought you'd get more. So yes, figure it out." He stood up, anger flashing across his face. "I came here asking for help, and I'm helping you by saying no. For the first time in your life, I'm saying no." He slammed the door on his way out. The coffee cup on my counter rattled. Madison came next, 2 days later. She was more composed than Tyler, but I could see the strain in her eyes. Her art gallery had closed. The prestigious Soho space was now a boutique gym. "I need you to write me a recommendation," she said without preamble. "For what?" "A grant application. There's a residency program in Berlin for emerging artists. Room and board included, small stipend." It's competitive, but I might have a chance if someone credible vouches for my work. What about your trust fund? What trust fund? Exactly. She glared at me. Mom said we each had trust funds, that you were keeping them from us. Your mother says many things. So there's no money? Not unless you earn it. This is insane. You're a millionaire. I'm a cardiac surgeon with a salary and a retirement account. The company is worth millions, yes, but that's the company, not me. Then give me a job. This surprised me. Doing what? I don't know. Whatever you need. File papers. Answer phones. I don't care. Do you know how to do either of those things? I can learn. I studied her. She meant it. I could see it in her eyes. Desperation? Yes. But also something new. Determination, maybe. The hospital has an administrative assistant position open in the cardiac wing, I said slowly. $15 an hour, 40 hours a week. You'd be scheduling appointments, filing patient charts, managing supply orders. You'd report to the department head, not to me. And she's tough. She'll fire you if you screw up. Fine. You'd need to start at 6 a.m., morning shift. Fine. And Madison, if you get this job, I expect you to keep it for at least a year. No quitting because it's boring or beneath you. Will you write my recommendation for the grant? If you work the job successfully for 6 months without being late or calling in sick unnecessarily, yes. She left with an application form. Zoe never came to my apartment, but I got a call from her 3 weeks post-divorce. She was calling from a number I didn't recognize. Daddy? Her voice was small, young. Like when she'd called me from college, her freshman year, homesick and scared. Zooey, I need help. I assumed. I'm staying with Aunt Jennifer. She said I can stay here for a month, but then I need to find my own place. I don't have first and last month's rent. I don't have a job. I don't have references. What happened to manifesting abundance? Silence. Then, that's mean. It's honest. I thought you loved me. I do love you. That's why I'm not giving you money. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't it? Zoe, you're 25 years old. You've been posting about wellness and abundance and finding your truth for 7 years. How much money have you made from it? That's not the point. I'm building a platform. On my money. More silence. I had over 500,000 followers, she said quietly. Had? I lost most of them when I couldn't keep up with the content. Turns out people don't want to follow a wellness influencer who's living on her aunt's couch. It's not on brand. What is your brand, Zoe? I don't know anymore. That admission cost her something. I could hear it in her voice. Come work with Madison, I heard myself say. There are 2 positions available. Same deal. 15 an hour, 6 a.m. start, report to someone who isn't me. Do it for 6 months without quitting, and we'll talk about the next step. What's the next step? I don't know, but at least you'll have 6 months of employment history and some savings. I don't want to work in a hospital. Then don't. But don't call me asking for money either. She hung up. I didn't know if she'd show up. She did. The following Monday, both Madison and Zoe appeared at the hospital's HR department. They were assigned to different shifts. Madison got days. Zoe got evenings. I'd requested that specifically. They needed to learn to stand on their own, not lean on each other. I watched from a distance. Not through cameras this time, but through the hospital grapevine. Nurses talked. Administrative staff talked. Word got around quickly that my daughters were working the front desk. Madison, apparently, was a quick learner, but had a terrible attitude the first 2 weeks. She'd snapped at a patient for being demanding. The department head had pulled her into an office and explained that if she ever spoke to a patient that way again, she'd be fired on the spot. Madison had apparently cried, then apologized to the patient, then buckled down and actually started trying. Zoe had it worse. She'd never been good at early mornings, or any mornings really. She'd shown up late 3 times in her first week. Her supervisor had given her a formal written warning. One more late arrival and she'd be terminated. The 4th time she was late, I happened to be in the hallway when she rushed through the entrance at 6:15 a.m. She saw me and stopped dead. "I'm sorry," she blurted. "My alarm didn't go off." "That's not an excuse that will work with your supervisor." "I know. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know." "Beg? Promise it won't happen again?" "Will it happen again?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Probably. I've never been good at mornings. I've never had to be. Then set 3 alarms. Go to bed earlier. Figure it out, Zoe. Because the world doesn't care if you're not a morning person. The patients who need that front desk staffed at 6 a.m. don't care. Your supervisor doesn't care. And I can't care for you anymore. She nodded slowly, wiped her eyes, and walked to the elevator. She wasn't late again. Patricia, meanwhile, was falling apart in ways I could track through mutual friends. She'd moved into a studio apartment in a bad part of town, all she could afford on short notice. She'd tried to restart her social media career, but her followers had evaporated when they realized the luxury lifestyle content was over. She'd attempted to date, according to Jennifer, who still talked to me occasionally. But men who'd been interested in the wife of a successful cardiac surgeon weren't interested in a divorced woman in her late 50s with no assets and 3 adult children she'd encouraged to betray their father. Her attorney had tried one last lawsuit alleging fraud and hidden assets. My attorney had crushed it in 2 hours with documentation showing everything had been disclosed in the prenup. The judge had sanctioned Patricia's attorney for filing frivolous motions. 6 months after the divorce, I took Madison and Zoe to dinner. It was the first time we'd spoken outside the hospital. They both looked different. Thinner, both of them, but in a healthy way. Less makeup, simpler clothes. Madison's hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, instead of the elaborate styles she used to spend hours on. Zoe had stopped getting her nails done. Her hands looked like they belonged to someone who actually worked. "So," I said after we'd ordered, "6 months. You both made it." "Barely," Madison said, but she was smiling slightly. "Mrs. Patterson is terrifying," Zoe added. "I'm pretty sure she was a drill sergeant in a past life." She was. Marines. 20 years. That explains so much. We ate in silence for a moment. "I wrote your recommendation for the Berlin program," I told Madison. Her head snapped up. "Really? You earned it. Whether you get accepted is up to them." "Thank you, Dad." The dad hit differently than it had 6 months ago. Softer. Real. "I've been thinking," Zoe said carefully, "about going back to school. Maybe studying nursing. I've been watching the nurses at the hospital and they're amazing. The things they do. The way they care for people. Nursing is hard work. I know. But maybe I'm ready for hard work." I looked at both of my daughters. They'd lost the entitled edge they'd carried for years. The assumption that the world owed them something. They looked tired, yes, but also more solid, more real. "Tyler called me last week," Madison said. "Did he?" "He got a job. Sales position at a tech company. He hates it. He says his manager is younger than him and treats him like an idiot. But he's learning." "Good. He wanted me to ask you something." "I'm not giving him money. He doesn't want money. He wants to know if you'll have coffee with him, just to talk." I considered this. "Did he send you to ask because he was afraid I'd say no?" "Yes. At least Tyler was learning honesty. Tell him I'll meet him. Once. And if he brings up money or asks for anything except my time, I'm walking out." Madison nodded. "What about Mom?" Zoe asked quietly. "What about her?" "She's struggling, Dad. Really struggling. She's working at a call center. She hates it. She's barely making rent. That's not my problem. She's our mother. She's your mother. She stopped being my wife the moment she decided to humiliate me in front of 80 people for financial gain. She made a mistake. She made a choice." Zoe looked down at her plate. "I made a choice too." I clapped. I thought it was funny. "I thought you deserved it for never being around." "I know, but I didn't understand. I didn't know what you were actually doing when you weren't around. I didn't know you were saving lives. I just knew you weren't at my dance recitals or my graduations or my birthday parties. I should have explained better. We should have asked. We should have tried to understand instead of just being angry." Madison reached across the table and took my hand. "We're sorry, Dad. Really sorry. Not because we lost everything, but because we never saw you. We never tried to see you." I felt something break open in my chest, something that had been locked tight for 6 months. "I should have been there more," I admitted. "I hid in work. Your mother was right about that. I was easier saving strangers' lives than navigating my own family." "We were really shitty to you," Zoe said bluntly. Yes, you were. Can we be less shitty going forward? I laughed. Actually laughed. I'd like that. We finished dinner. I paid, with my own money, from my salary, because that's what fathers do. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. As we left the restaurant, Madison turned to me. Dad, can I ask you something? Yes. Why did you really let us struggle? You could have stepped in at any point, given us money or jobs that actually paid well or made this easier. Why didn't you? I thought about that. About the surveillance footage I'd watched. About the pain of seeing them celebrate my humiliation. About the 30 years of enabling I'd done without realizing it. Because I loved you enough to let you fail, I said finally. And I loved myself enough to stop being your ATM. 9 months after the divorce, Tyler, Madison, Zoe, and I had breakfast together at a diner near the hospital. Tyler was still at his sales job. He'd been promoted to senior account manager. Madison had been accepted to the Berlin program and was leaving in 2 weeks. Zoe had enrolled in community college and was taking prerequisites for nursing school while still working at the hospital. They looked like different people. They looked like adults. Mom wants to see you, Tyler said carefully. No, she's been in therapy. She's trying to take accountability. Good for her. That doesn't obligate me to anything. Dad, she's our mother. Your ex-wife. Doesn't that count for something? I thought about Patricia, about the woman I'd married 30 years ago who'd been fun and spontaneous and full of life, about how that woman had slowly transformed into someone who measured every relationship in dollar signs, about how I'd been too busy or too cowardly to address it until it was too late. It counts for 30 years of memories, I said. Some good, many bad. It counts for 3 children I love, but it doesn't count for forgiveness she hasn't earned. What would she need to do to earn it? I honestly don't know. Maybe nothing she does will be enough. Maybe the trust is just broken. That's sad, Zoe said softly. It is, but it's honest, and honestly is something I should have practiced more during our marriage. My phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Emergency. Aortic dissection. Patient crashing. I have to go, I said, already standing. Of course you do, Tyler said. But he was smiling. Go, save someone's life, Dad. I left money on the table and rushed out. Behind me, I heard Madison say to her siblings, that's what he does. That's who he is. And for the first time in 30 years, it sounded like she understood. I performed the surgery. 8 hours, start to finish. The patient was a 42-year-old father of 3. We saved him. When I scrubbed out, exhausted and running on adrenaline and coffee, I checked my phone. 3 messages. 1 from each of my children. Tyler. Hope the surgery went well. Proud of you. Madison. Saving lives. That's pretty cool, Dad. Zoe. Be safe. Love you. I stood in the locker room, still in my scrubs, and felt something I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Peace. I'd lost my marriage. I'd lost the family structure I'd built. I'd lost the illusion that providing for people was the same as being present for them. But I'd found my children, the real ones, not the entitled strangers who'd clapped at my humiliation, but the struggling, growing, learning adults who were figuring out who they wanted to be. It had taken 9 months of struggle. 9 months of them living in small apartments and working jobs they'd once thought beneath them. 9 months of me learning to say no and them learning to hear it. But we'd gotten here. To this moment. To peace. I drove to my apartment through early morning traffic. The city was waking up. People heading to jobs, to lives, to struggles I'd never know about. My phone rang. Unknown number. Dr. Chen? A woman's voice I didn't recognize. Yes, this is Emily Rodriguez. I'm a social worker at Connecticut General. We have a patient here, Patricia Chen, listed as your emergency contact. She's asked to see you. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. What happened? She collapsed at her workplace. Possible stroke. She's stable now, but she's asking for you. I pulled into a parking lot, sat there with the engine running. Patricia had tried to destroy me, had weaponized our children against me, had planned my humiliation for financial gain. She'd also been my wife for 30 years. The mother of my children. The woman I'd once loved enough to promise forever. Tell her I'm on my way, I heard myself say. Because that's what you do. Not because people deserve it. Not because it fixes anything. But because some choices define who you are more than any revenge ever could. I drove to Connecticut General. Patricia looked small in the hospital bed. Fragile. Older than I remembered. Michael, she whispered when I entered. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know. I was wrong. About everything. I pulled a chair close to her bed. Took her hand. It felt thin. Cold. How bad is it? She asked. I'll talk to your doctors. Make sure you're getting the best care. Will you call the kids? Already did. They're on their way. She closed her eyes. A tear leaked out. I destroyed everything, she said. You destroyed what was broken. We're building something new. We? The kids and I. Maybe someday you too. But that's a long road. I don't deserve a road. None of us deserve anything. We just get chances. What we do with them is up to us. Tyler, Madison, and Zoe arrived within the hour. We stood around Patricia's bed together, a family that looked nothing like the one we'd been. But maybe that was okay. Maybe what we'd been was never sustainable anyway. Patricia recovered. Minor stroke, caught early. She'd need therapy and lifestyle changes, but she'd be okay. A year after the divorce, I sat in my apartment alone on a Friday night. Madison was in Berlin. Zoe was in her second semester of nursing school. Tyler had been promoted again and moved to Boston. Patricia lived in a modest apartment near her new job, administrative work at a nonprofit. We spoke occasionally, carefully, like acquaintances, learning to be civil. My phone rang. Dad? Tyler's voice. Can I ask you something? Of course. I've been thinking about starting another business, but doing it right this time. Actually understanding the financials, the market, all of it. Would you be willing to advise? Not fund. Just advise. I smiled. I'd like that. Really? Really. Tell me your idea. And he did. For an hour, we talked business strategy and market analysis and financial planning. He'd learned so much, grown so much. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and thought about the yacht, about Patricia's smile as she announced our divorce, about the applause, about how sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what actually matters. I'd lost a marriage built on assumptions and avoidance. I'd lost the illusion of family harmony purchased through endless enabling. But I'd found my children, really found them, in their struggle and growth and slow, painful learning. I'd found myself too, not as a provider or an ATM or a solution to everyone's problems, but as a father who loved his children enough to let them fail. As a man who knew his own worth wasn't measured in dollars, the revenge hadn't been cutting them off. The revenge had been in walking away, in letting them discover who they were without the safety net, in letting them learn that I was a person, not a resource. And maybe, just maybe, in showing them that the greatest gift a parent can give isn't money or comfort or protection from consequences. It's the belief that they can survive, that they can grow, that they can become something more than their worst moments. I thought about the patient I'd saved earlier that week, about his 3 children waiting in the lobby, about the look on their faces when I'd told them their father would be okay. That's what I did. That's who I was. Not perfect, not always present, but trying. And now, finally, my children saw that too. I poured myself a scotch, cheap stuff, because I paid for it myself now, and raised it to the empty room. To second chances, I said aloud, and to the courage it takes to earn them. The apartment didn't answer. But somewhere in Connecticut, Berlin, and Boston, 3 people who shared my DNA were building lives they'd earned themselves. And that was worth more than everything I'd lost. That was worth everything.